the all-time Tennessee football coaching staff is now. Let me get some of your suggestions. Who has to be on there? So here's my rule. Here is my rule. You have to have coached that position at Tennessee or in your history. So like I couldn't take trying to think of a good example. I couldn't put Josh Heupel at running backs coach just because I want an extra offensive mind on my group. Is that fair?
So theoretically, another example of that would be you can't have Lovie Smith as a defensive coordinator, even though he was a defensive coordinator and coached at Tennessee, because he was never a defensive coordinator at Tennessee. Am I right?
No, you could have him because he's coached defensive coordinator on his resume.
Okay. All right. So they have to have coached at Tennessee and had the position that they coached on their resume.
Right. All right. So, but I want to do this also in terms of breaking it down by recruiters and coordinators. And it's brought to you by Andy Mason, AndyMasonRealEstate.com. Man, Andy Mason his office has over 40 years of experience. Go to AndyMasonRealEstate.com for any real estate transaction you need, and he'll save you money. He has the best service and the best prices in the biz. It is just that simple. Go to AndyMasonRealEstate.com. All right, so let's start it out in a weird sort of way, because what I would like to do is I would like to fill in positions via coordinators, head coach, and recruiters. So I'm going to give you 1, 2, and 2. You get to pick a head coach. You get to pick 2 recruiters. I don't care if they coach the same position, and then we'll actually build a staff right here. So 4 Downs is now brought to you by Andy Mason, AndyMasonRealEstate.com.
4 Downs. 4 questions. 4 answers. The Dave Hooker Show.
4
Downs. A presentation of OffTheHookSports.com.
All righty, here we go. So let's go ahead and get it started right now. And I'm going to ask you first, you pick the 2 recruiters that you would go out and get and that would be on your staff, because let's face it, it is a recruiting sport. It's not like the NFL where you need the greatest minds in the world. You need the greatest recruiters. At the end of the day, you would take a 60-40 great recruiter over a 60-40 great schematic coach. I mean, you would agree with that, right?
I agree. Depending on actually, it depends on the job. At Nebraska, I would take 60-40 schematic because you can't recruit anyway, even if you have a good recruiter.
Fair point. And there are variances. I might take a 70-30 schematic coach. But nevertheless, here we go. Cooper, what down is it, sir?
Coop here. First down.
All right, first down. Your recruiters are?
I'm torn between 3 former head coaches, funny enough. Doug Dickey, Johnny Majors, and Philip Fulmer. Fulmer's on there automatically. I don't know who my other recruiter would be between Majors and Dickey. And because they both did certain things to take Tennessee national for recruiting perspective. But I think I would go Doug Dickey, because Doug Dickey made Tennessee a national brand as an athletic director, knowing that's what was needed to recruit.
Okay, I didn't include head coaches, so you got me there. But I'm going to say Trooper Taylor, and I think he's 1. And then I am going to I really, really want to put Dan Brooks in there because I thought he was an underrated recruiter. I thought he did great in the Carolinas, and I don't think he wanted a lot of credit nor cared. So Dan Brooks is right there. But instead of Dan Brooks, man, Fulmer as an assistant was just an incredible one. I'll tell you where I'm going to go. I'm going to go with Rodney Garner based off his history. Rodney Garner has been one of the best recruiters in the SEC throughout his history. Is he as good now as he was 10 years ago? Well, age, probably not, but he's still very, very good. So I'm going to go Trooper Taylor and Rodney Garner as my 2 recruiters. What down is it now, Coop?
Cooper Mays here. Second down.
All right, give me your coordinators. Give me your defensive coordinator first.
Okay. I'm torn between two guys, Dave, and you can help me. Since you said we could use him, Lovie Smith is one of them. Dude was a heck of a defensive coach.
Yeah, you kind of beat me on that one, to be real
But
honest.
the other one I'm really torn is between him and Larry Lacewell, who invented the 4-3.
Was pretty good. And a bonus of a really good recruiter, too.
Yes,
Yeah,
that's
he was
true.
a very good evaluator of talent for the Cowboys for a number of years.
And I got another major question. Yeah, do we put somebody just beat me to the message board on this? Do we put Jeremy Pruitt in as defensive coordinator? I mean,
No,
whatever you want to say, because he.
Well, we don't just because he's stupid. So,
fair enough.
So there's a stupidity factor in there that can automatically get you knocked out. The message board, by the way, is saying Philip Fulmer, they agree with you, and Trooper as recruiters. And then we got Jeremy Pruitt as a question. Deion Sanders is a hypocrite and a loudmouth. We're only including guys that have ties to Tennessee. Did you see?
Okay, so we're down to Lacewell and Lovie Smith.
Amputated, by the way.
I'm sorry.
Did you see where he might have to have his foot amputated? By the way.
Yeah, he's had problems with that ever since playing at that Cowboys old stadium that calls turf toe.
Yeah, and it's not the sugar foot either. It's not diabetes, but he's already had 3 or 4 toes amputated. All right, so I'm gonna go with those two, the ones I said. But Dan Brooks is a very close second, but I'll go with Garner and Trooper. All right, defensive coordinator. I'm going to go a little off script. I'm going to go John Jancic. And I think he did maybe a reach, but I don't think he had an offense that set him up for much. And the time I saw him, I don't know his career front and back, but I thought he did a really good job. And when he left, I thought it was a really, really bad sign for Tennessee's program. So I'll go Jancic. Offensive coordinator, man.
I think you're letting your disdain for Butch Jones cloud your judgment to like John Jancic since they had a bad parting of the ways, because that he rushed 3 and had 2 guys in spy on a 4th and 15 against Florida.
That's fair. But I can't go John Chavis because I think he benefited from talent. So I'm gonna go Jancic on that one. You could talk me into Lacewell in a heartbeat. And then your offensive coordinator is who? Mine is going to totally stun you.
Well, do you want a coach who develops talent for the NFL or a coach who's more likely to win at the college level?
It is your parameter, sir. You tell me what you want.
I think it's obviously Josh Heupel. David Cutcliffe would develop you for the NFL better, but Josh Heupel is more likely to win games and out-scheme coaches on game day. And it's about winning, baby. Just win, baby.
I'm going to Lane Kiffin.
That's not a bad one.
I'm going Lane Kiffin over Josh Heupel.
But Dave, just last week we had a debate over who had a better offensive mind, and didn't we both agree that Heupel has the better offensive mind? Or did you say Lane? I forgot.
I think that Josh Heupel has a better offensive scheme. I think that Lane Kiffin, what he did with Jonathan Crompton and realizing that his confidence was crushed in the offseason, that 2009 season didn't get off to a good run, and him basically telling his brother-in-law, David Reeves, to go kick rocks and stay away from my quarterback. And he took over coaching quarterbacks, and they did a lot of rollouts and simple reads. I think that changed the way Jonathan Crompton is viewed forever. I think he saved a quarterback mid-season. I haven't seen many people do that. I don't know that I've seen anybody do that. So I would go Lane Kiffin as my offensive coordinator / quarterback coach. And you're looking at me like I'm semi.
Well, there's also
Jonathan was on a bad path that year. I can't share all the details, but that was going to go south until the Georgia game.
I remember that turning point game. There's also some chemistry factors, to be honest, though. And I mean, come on, Lane Kiffin playing second fiddle to another coach. I mean, it barely worked with Nick Saban. It barely worked.
No chemistry. They all get along. They all come in
Because
and they smoke a big fat orange joint,
Saban-
and they all get
Saban
along.
was basically like, don't even coach the national title game. You are way too toxic. Just go take your little Florida Atlantic job and get out of Tuscaloosa.
Well, but David Cutcliffe also left for the Ole Miss job and didn't coach the national championship game.
I don't think he was forced out. I think Saban kind of forced out Lane Kiffin.
He wasn't, and he was actually invited to come take part in some of the festivities, and he passed on it because Ole Miss had an early bowl game. So no, you're right, he wasn't. So that's my DC. I mean my OC. Who's your head coach?
This is obvious. It's Nayland. It's not even a question.
It has to be Neyland.
And here's the real reason it's Nayland. So Majors won a national championship in 1976 at Pitt. Fulmer won one in 1998 at Tennessee. Bowden Wyatt should have won one in 1956 at Tennessee. Doug Dickey got a retroactive one in 1967 at Tennessee. What do they all have in common? They all retired or were either retired under pressure or were fired after it was very clear that the game had passed them by. Either they really struggled towards the end of their careers. Neyland dominated in the 1920s, dominated in the 1930s, dominated in the 1940s, dominated in the 1950s. Do you know how great of a coach you have to be to adjust to different eras over a 40 to 50 year period?
Yes, which is why I'm changing my DC. Thank you. Oh, no, that was the wrong one. Putting it up on the message board now. Rocky Top Tom saying Monty Kiffin's son couldn't stop a group of 5-year-olds from taking a nap. Actually, I think that would be difficult. I'm going to say Monty Kiffin.
Monty Kiffin is your defensive coordinator?
Instead of Jansig, you got the better one with Lacewool.
Yeah, you could have gone with Lovie Smith, although Lovie Smith, didn't he develop under Monty Kiffin? So I guess you might as well take Monty Kiffin at that point. Or that's
I'm going to take Monty Kiffin. I am going to do that, although I don't know how good he would be against today's defense.
Yeah, he's another coach whose system he's another coach who couldn't adapt when his system got figured out. Because remember, the Tampa 2 got figured out in the early 2010s. And then he got forced out of USC because of that. And he couldn't.
Yeah,
and
but
then
he
went to
did
Cowboys.
But he did come up with a defense that still has a name.
Yeah, but then he went to your Cowboys, and that defense was historically bad. Remember that one?
Yes. Okay, so here is my rundown, and I might leave out a position. Fill me in if you want to. My defensive back coach is Kevin Ramsey. By the way, hit that like button, subscribe if you haven't to this point. So we're going to go ahead. That was 4th down, by the way. The head coach is
All SEC center Cooper Mays here. 4th down.
Neyland. That was pretty simple. And all right, here's my lineup. Defensive backs coach Kevin Ramsey. Now, you may not remember him a little bit before your time. He left the 98 team, was replaced by Larry Slade. Deion Grant said, if Larry Slade's going to be the head coach, then I'm leaving. And that's exactly what Deion Grant did. So Kevin Ramsey was the coach before that. Was a very good defensive backs coach. I got him. Wide receiver coach, because I have to find a way for the greatest recruiter, and he had great success, is Trooper Taylor. On the offensive side, this may surprise you, but I'm going off history and another offensive mind in the room. Randy Sanders as a running backs coach. As the offensive line coach, I'm going Philip Fulmer. That one was easy. On the defensive side, I go Steve Caldwell because of what he produced in defensive end talent. On the defensive tackle position, I'm going to go Dan Brooks because of what he was able to do, not only with those guys like Hainsworth and in particular, Hainsworth was a handful, but Hainsworth and Henderson, sure, they had talent, but there were a couple of guys along the way that weren't really motivated to play. And I thought Brooks brought out the best in them. People wanted to play for him. And the recruiter end of it, linebacker coach, I don't know. I'm going to let you fill in the blank there. And then quarterback coach, I know I'm going beyond the 10 NCAA limit. Quarterback coach, I would go David Cutcliffe. And again, my offensive coordinator would be Lane Kiffin. My defensive coordinator would, I'm going Monty Kiffin. My head coach is General Neyland. That's a pretty good staff. Both of us are going to win a lot of games.
Yeah, but I think I can beat your staff.
Lay it on me. Here we go.
All right, so Robert Neyland's my head coach. Heupel's my offensive coordinator. I like your give and take, but Heupel's my offensive coordinator. Larry Lacewell's my defensive coordinator. I'm going to go David Cutcliffe is my quarterback's coach. My running backs coach, and you forget this, he won an assistant. He won a national championship as an assistant backs coach under Frank Broyles. Johnny Majors is my running backs coach. And he coached a Heisman winner at running back.
Man, okay. You beat me with Majors.
My receivers coach would actually be Kippy Brown. I think that Kippy Brown had a great track record as a receivers coach when Tennessee became wide receiver U with the Carl Pickens years. Should have gotten the head coaching job in 2009. I could be swayed on that, though, to be fair. I could be swayed on that.
No, I think you're right. I think I'll admit I think I'll admit another loss on that because you had Pickens and Harper come there, and Harper was a track guy, and Pickens, correct me if I'm wrong, was a junior
he was a defensive back. Guy. No, he wasn't. No, but he was.
Not Pickens. Who was the junior? They had Stanley Morgan, who I thought was raw, and who was the junior college?
Oh, Anthony Hancock. Was that his Anthony Miller? Anthony Miller, right?
Yes.
Is that his name?
So yes. He did. I will agree with that. I thought that Trooper had some guys that were pretty polished and pretty talented when they showed up at campus. So I will. I'll give you. I think you beat me on 2. And then we've got Peyton Manning, quarterback coach. He hasn't been a coach.
He hasn't been a coach, and he would be a terrible coach, guys. He would be a horrible coach.
I don't think you would want to do it. And then special teams coach. I don't know. You just throw that to somebody. But
Oh no, I got the guys. I'm still there. Which is George Kafiga. Was a longtime special teams coach for Tennessee. Was one of their elite players during the Neyland years. Go back and look him up, guys. George.
No,
Kafiga
I know Kafiga. Yeah, no, I know Kafiga.
Was that how you pronounce his name?
Yeah, Kafiga. I would give him Kafiga. But I mean, the thing, Tennessee was really good on special teams when Caldwell was the coordinator. So I don't know. With defensive ends, there's not a lot to teach in defensive ends. It's kind of like running back, not exactly the same, but you've got time to do special teams. So I'd probably go Caldwell just basically because we're running out of positions. You can only have 10 by the NCAA.
Oh, I know.
Yeah, I think our staff's at about 14 and 15 and 18.
Well, Bowden Wyatt's coaching tight ends, by the way. He was an end himself. It was an epic end coacher. And then Fulmer, you're right, is coaching offensive line. I think Fulmer's the best offensive line coach Tennessee football ever had. But there is one guy who competes with Fulmer, and he coached both lines in the 1940s under Neyland when they emerged when the line became the dominant force of Tennessee. And his name was John Barnhill. And he stepped in for Neyland when Neyland
remember the name?
Served in World War II. It's between John Barnhill and Hodges West. Hodges West was there during the Doug Atkins years. So, but I don't think there was a lot of coaching with Doug Atkins. Nobody played.
Hey, Travis with a good point. This is a little bit of a reach by Travis, but I like it. Travis says go get Shane Beamer, who was a GA at Tennessee that focused on special teams.
That's true, but he was a GA at Tennessee when Leonard Scott was there, and Leonard Scott never matched his potential as a returner. And he also was a GA at Tennessee when the year after Alex Walls was an All-American. And Alex Walls never lived up to his All-American kicking after that. But he was a GA when Dustin Colquitt should have won the Ray Guy Award. So
that's true. And Rocky Top Tom brings up a great point. In some contexts, we discount pre-70s ball, but in this context, one of the most impacted by style of play in an era, we're mixing eras and not discounting era-restricted coaches. You're absolutely right. I've got no argument. Like that's why I wouldn't go with a guy who coached Barnhill, who coached offensive line and defensive line. I just think it's too specialized now.
But hold on, I'm going to push back on that in this way. Coaching can transcend eras. Playing can't. Okay, there's a reason that coaches can coach till they're 75 or 80 if they're good, and a player can't play past 40 if he's good. Because, again,
I don't think coaching can transcend eras.
Coaches can transcend eras if they're good. Bear Bryant won a national title in 1950, and he also won one in 1978.
Okay, but you know how I feel about Jeremy Pruitt, that he's a dodo bird, right?
Right.
But he was the guy who said, and he said this during some impromptu conversation with some reporters, that he was ahead of the curve on. He said, I don't really care if they put their hand down or not. If their body gets parallel with the field and they're not losing speed, who cares if they start with their hand down or not if they're rushing the passer? That's something Barnhill would have never said. He would have thought you either have your hand down or you're a linebacker, right?
Theoretically, I guess that's true, but we don't know for sure how he changed with the times. I mean, that part's hard to say. You're right, but then I mean, we could go that way with anybody because look, at some point, Josh Heupel's offense is going to be figured out, and when that happens, again, the mark of Josh Heupel will be can he adjust or not. Steve Spurrier's fun and gun was figured out. He went to South Carolina and then had the best 10-year run in South Carolina football history because he's a good coach, and it didn't matter that the game had passed by his system. He still knew how to coach.
Yep.
So,
No, you're right. You're right. And how about a topic for tomorrow? Will Josh, maybe I'll have my voice back from screaming at Dave Grohl. Tomorrow, how about we have the topic of will Josh Heupel's offense ever be figured out? Because there's a couple reasons schematically that unless they change the rules, I don't think it ever will. And I'm not sure that Steve Spurrier's ever was. I'm not sure that Urban Meyer's ever was. But
I think Spurrier was, but that's a different debate.
Yeah, I just don't. I think he was the only dude that could run it. It worked at South Carolina to some extent, right?
I don't think he ran the fun and gun in South Carolina. I think the thing we're forgetting is Steve Spurrier was just a brilliant offensive mind, and the fun and gun was the system, but he knew to run that system because nobody in the SEC could defend it.
I felt like he ran the fun and gun, but he would run the ball.
Yes. Spurrier went out. The real truth of Spurrier is that we overrated the concept of the fun and gun as a system. This was just Spurrier was a genius offensive mind who just knew how to he outsmarted other coaches on game day. And during that time,
Rocky Top Tom, I love that topic. He says Kirby figured it out last year, stop the run, force your DBs to man up. I love that notion.